Last summer, one day, I was having lunch with my family, and I hadn't seen them in a long time, so naturally I suggested that we do something after. I suggested that we watch a film. Everyone said they'd love to, so I pulled out my phone and went to check the cinemas around us. And that's when my aunt, from across the table, looked at me and said, No, what are you doing? Let's just stay home and watch Netflix. And that was something quite odd coming from her because she's always loved getting out of the house, but most of all, just like me, she's always loved going to the movies. But then she went on to say something that I could never quite forget. She said, "What is the point of going to the movies when all that is showing these days are the more of the same superhero films?" Well, I thought to myself, that certainly cannot be right. So I pulled out my phone anyway and went to check it, and it turns out she was kind of right. But it wasn't always like this, was it? So that's why today I'm going to talk about how superhero films changed cinema completely. So, first of all, what exactly is it that I mean by superhero movies? Well, obviously I am talking about those big-budget Marvel and DC pictures that we all know and love, but there's more to it. You see, in order to understand the cinematic movement that has redefined the rules for commercial success in the film business and has therefore shaped our taste in the seven art, we have to understand that this movement has actually scaled up to almost all big productions out there, even if they don't necessarily have a traditional superhero that wears a cape and can fly. The main character might actually not even be super at all. What connects everything is that all those productions use, and some would even say abuse, the hero archetype. The hero archetype is this structure for storytelling. It is all about getting out of your comfort zone, facing the challenges that life gives you, and overcoming them. Us, humans, we love it. And we love it because we empathize so much with it. Although we're not some sort of knight on a quest to save the princess from a dragon, in some way, when it comes to the core of the problems that we face on our daily life, we do kind of see ourselves as the knight. And in a way, we're all fighting our own dragon and trying to save our own princess. And this framework for storytelling, it is so important to us and so deep into our roots that it is present all throughout humanity's history. You can find it in books, in plays, and even in other films, such as Forrest Gump and Citizen Kane, which are considered to be some of the greatest of all time. And then you might ask me, what's so special then about superhero movies using their archetype? Well, the problem is that the message was lost somewhere in the way. The hero archetype should be used as a basis, so you can build something on top of it, so you can raise questions, talk about love, hate, greed, empathy. But in those films, on the other hand, it is only used as an emotional hook. Since we connect so easily to that type of story, studios can get away with shallow and empty films that are just easier to make, or even better, cheaper to make in high quantities. And in the end of the day, the hero archetype ends up being used as nothing but a cash cow. But come on, let's face it, it is still an industry. It is still a business that we are talking about. And the truth is, none of us, nobody, can expect any company out there to put out a film without any expectation of making money. And that's okay. That's completely fine. You see, art and business have always coexisted across all forms of media that you can think of. Abbey Road, the album by the Beatles, for example. It is a classic and is considered by many perhaps the best album in the history of rock and roll, but it only came to be because of pressure from the studio, and it is still a work of art. The issue is when all the films that carry a message, carry the artistic weight of cinema, make us think of who we are and the world we live in, just start to disappear right in front of our eyes because all the space is taken by the movies that rely on that very same pattern and those same old characters from decades ago. If you look at the biggest box office films of the 70s, for example, well, you're going to find pictures such as The Godfather, Jaws, Rocky, and although they did aim at making profit, obviously, they also allowed for the touch of art, most importantly, originality to come out. But if you look at the top 20 biggest box office films of last decade, 19 of them were distributed by one of the two giants, Disney or Universal Studios. And again, 19 of them, and I am talking about the 20 most successful films of last decade. 19 of them are either a sequel, a prequel, or some sort of spin-off. So, where did all the originality go? What happened to those films that are so important to us? Well, this movement that I've been talking about, it is actually more of a cycle. And this cycle has gotten so big that it changed the language of cinema. Just like anything in life, we expect things to be a certain way. We expect people to dress and shake our hands in a certain manner. We expect people not to have a crazy hairstyle, for example. And it is the same with cinema. We expect the scenes, the dialogues, the story to be told within that language. If you've ever wondered why old films just seem so fake and slow and the performances really don't work anymore, well, that is because the language has changed. In a way, it's just like having coffee. If I were to add a little bit of sugar to your coffee every day, a little bit more every time, at some point, you won't be able to take it without sugar anymore. And that's what happened. Those films got so much traction and gotten so popular in the early 2000s that it gave those companies more money and power to put out more and bigger films each time. And it got to the point where we are completely surrounded by this one genre. And as a consequence, the rest of the industry had no choice but to adapt as well. So exhibitors, the film theaters themselves, they are obviously only going to show what we demand. And then, if this is all we see, how can we even appreciate or even get to know anything else? The mid-budget films, the sci-fis, romances, comedies, the films that would get people going to the movies on a daily basis, they're just vanishing. Now, for a film to be commercially successful, they have no choice but to make that film much more a product than a work of art. Writing a great screenplay doesn't mean writing a great story anymore. It means writing a story that's going to give you a sequel and allow you to sell merchandise. If you look at the Avengers, for example, and don't get me wrong, I am a huge fan myself. But if you take the film Avengers as an example, they did make billions of dollars at the box office. But they made about 10 times more money, only through merch. And here is the tricky part. Let's say we couldn't care less about cinema as a form of art, and only look at it as a form of entertainment and as a business. Because after all, it is still the show business that we are talking about. If this cycle keeps growing, we might still be headed towards a major crisis in the industry. Since investing in a new story with new characters, new worlds, is only profitable in the long term, most studios choose to stay in the fight for now. They don't want to get left behind. They just keep milking the same distribution rights that they already have. But for how long can it go on? We've already started to see some superhero movies fail in the past couple of years. And if the whole thing keeps going, it might just get to the point where cinema of art, on one hand, is too boring. That's not the language anymore. But superhero movies have been oversold. Too repetitive. There's nothing new. And then, just like my aunt, no one is going to have a reason to go to the movies anymore. And here's the thing. All of this that I am talking about, well, this is change. I can't stop it. Nobody can. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't stop it. Because that's the beauty of art. That's the beauty of cinema. The fact that it is fluid, that it adapts through culture and time. And there's nothing we can do about it. You see, even superhero movies, they play an essential role themselves. They have inspired people all over the world to be the best versions of themselves. They brought family together, inspired people to be their own superhero. They've even put comic books, which were once considered a low type of literature, on the spotlight. And if that's all that we want from cinema from now on, that's okay. That's all right. But let's just make that choice consciously. Let's be aware of what exactly it is that we are leaving behind. And the only way of doing so is giving those films a chance. So, after this whole thought process, I went back to my aunt, who, just like me, loves both cinema of art and superhero movies, and I said, look, you are right. It is true that most of the industry is flooded by that one genre. But if you look close enough, you can still find that other side of cinema. And if we want to keep it alive, then it's up to us to go watch those dying films. So, what I ask from you guys today is not that you go protest against Universal Studios or something. No, far from it, okay? But next time you feel like going to the movies, do consider the international, independent one. It honestly might seem quite boring and even make you feel a bit uncomfortable at first. But maybe, by the time the credits roll, just maybe, you end up liking it. Thank you very much.